open. Déclaration de député, statements by members. The honourable member for Nunavut. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last fall, I committed to visiting every community in Nunavut over the coming year. Today, I'm proud to say that I visited 23 of 25 of Nunavut's communities, with Arctic Bay and Grise Fjord scheduled for early next month. I've traveled from Kugluktuk in the west, to Kikiktukjuak in the east, Sanikiluak in the south, and Resolute Bay in the north. Although each of Nunavut's communities are unique, the thoughts and concerns raised by my constituents in every community were similar. Concerns about Nunavut's suicide rate, the lack of mental health facilities and services, the high cost of living, and the broken Nutrition North program were voiced territory-wide. Mr. Speaker, these issues are not new. They are serious and have been significantly affecting the quality of life for Nunavut youth for far too long. Mr. Speaker, we expect and deserve meaningful action on these issues as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, a key opportunity for our economy is the exploding global demand for high-quality protein. Canada's open net aquaculture industry is a key contributor to our seafood exports, but the industry faces some serious constraints. Growing public concern for the health of the environment and for wild stocks, attenuating support from Indigenous peoples, the lack of new licenses, and massive losses globally due to sea lice, viruses, and even in Washington state, complete net pen collapse suggest we need to alter our course. We should recognize these threats and embrace the exciting opportunity. British Columbia has a moratorium on licenses, and our government should support that. There's nothing more perfect or more respected on the west coast of Canada than wild salmon. It's time to deliver on our innovation economy, grow our agri-food exports through land-based salmon aquaculture. Thank you.
Honourable member for Banff Airview.
Well, Mr. Speaker, today is World Tourism Day, and as we all know, tourism is one of the most important sectors in the Canadian economy. And this is especially true in my riding of Banff Airdrie. Tourism is a $90 billion a year industry, and it accounts for 1 in every 11 jobs in Canada. And most tourism operations are small businesses, the backbone of the Canadian economy. Nearly 10% of small and medium-sized businesses in Canada operate in tourism. And over the past month, I've heard from hundreds of tourism operators that are concerned. Tourism operators like campground owners who are outraged that the Liberals are branding them as millionaire tax cheats and comparing them to Marie Antoinette. Tourism is very dependent on factors outside of their control to be successful. And these tax changes will make it harder for Canadians working in tourism to save for a rainy day or plan for their financial futures. And we should be doing everything possible to lessen their tax burden, not increasing it. And today, on World Tourism Day, the Liberals should do the right thing to ensure the viability of the tourism operations by cancelling the proposed small business tax increases.
The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, this October 7th to 9th, the quaint and historic town of Rigaud will be celebrating its 20th annual Festival of Colours. It's an opportunity for families, friends, and all those who form our community to come together to celebrate the coming of fall and to take in once again our dazzling displays of colour, arts, and culture, as well as fun activities and delicious food for the whole family. Mr. Speaker, I invite all those who live in Vaudreuil-Soulanges to join my family and I on this 20th anniversary of the Festival des Couleurs to celebrate the beauty and the strength of our community. This year, more than ever before, things are happening in Rigaud.
Député de Beloit-Chambly.
Que je souligne la carrière politique de M. Gilles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with mixed feelings that I highlight the political career of Mr. Gilles Laplante, the Mayor of McMasterville, Reeve of the MRC of Vallée de Richelieu. Like all people in McMasterville, I learned on Monday that he won't be seeking a new mandate this fall. Imagine, he served his community for 28 years. First of all, as a councillor from 89 to 93, as mayor from 93 to 2017, and he was has been Reeve for the past 14 years. He's also a mentor. And this is reflective of his personality, discreet, humble, but strong. His advice and encouragement helped me become a better MP. The legacy that he's living means that the city is loved by seniors, families, but the time has come for him to think about his family. I imagine that Bernadette and his family will be happy to have him back. On behalf of everyone in the Richelieu Valley, I'd like to say thank you, Gilles.
For Hamilton East Stony Creek.
Mr. Speaker, my city of Hamilton has benefited greatly from our government's handling of the economy. In the past year, employment has grown from 308,000 to 429,000 people with jobs in the Hamilton CMA. In my riding, we have a rail car manufacturer whose workforce has more than doubled in recent years, many of whom are being trained by company programs. Products exported all throughout North America. Another company makes equipment for the oil industry in Canada and the United States and struggles to keep up with the demand. And yet another makes infrared heating devices for customers worldwide, including the United States, Germany, and China, despite that country's 20% tariff on his products. These companies range from 30 to 2,500 employees with the potential for more hirings in a strong economic environment. I'm sure Hamilton's success story will be repeated throughout Canada if we stay the course on our management of the economy. Thank you.
Honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to share that this weekend in my riding of Markham Unionville, I will be hosting a roundtable for small businesses and professionals. I have received numerous calls and emails from the residents of Markham Unionville who are concerned about what these new tax changes means for their families. Many local businesses, owners, and professionals will be meeting this Sunday to discuss the government-proposed tax changes that will be making it harder for them to be successful. Mr. Speaker, these are the entrepreneurs who take risks and create jobs in our country. Professionals, entrepreneurs, and small businesses, men and women, are the backbone of our economy. And I will remind them that I will continue to fight against this tax hike every step of the way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to rise today to pay tribute to an outstanding individual who has done so much for so many in Newmarket. I want to personally congratulate Jackie Plater on receiving the Newmarket Honorary Citizen Award. The award was presented by the town in recognition of an individual's outstanding service and commitment. I can't think of a better recipient of this prestigious award. Jackie is exceptional. Her accomplishments are too lengthy to list, but I will name but a few of the organizations she has helped. Belinda's Place, Victim Services, the Newmarket Farmers Market, the Newmarket Historical Society, and the Gala for the Arts. She volunteers her time for Terry Fox, Easter Seals, MS, and In From the Cold. She is a tireless and effective promoter of her beloved Main Street, a jewel in our town. I was proud to attend the ceremony with Jackie and her family and friends on Saturday at Ferry Lake. Jackie, congratulations and thank you. You are indeed the Queen of Newmarket.
Honourable member for Fleetwood Port Kells.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many people in this place and many right across the country have been touched by autism. It's something we don't know a lot about, but here's what we do know. 1 in 68 kids are somewhere on the spectrum this day, and that's double in the last 10 years. We also know about the financial and emotional hardships that it brings on families. So we need to hear their voices on the way forward, which is why I'm going to be holding a town hall this Saturday at the Fleetwood Recreation Centre from 3 to 5 p.m. It'll be live streamed on Facebook for those who want to tune in. We're going to have Autism BC. We're going to have Paula Williams, a mom who's lived the challenges and who's also made a great contribution to the national conversation on this issue. And Dave Herford, who is working on a policy that he believes will move the government and the country forward. We need to hear more. We need to do more. That's the focus. That's why we're doing this town hall on Saturday.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Yorkton Millville.
Mr. Speaker, Communities in Bloom is a Canadian non-profit organization committed to fostering civic pride, environmental responsibility, and beautification through community involvement in a national program to enhance green spaces. The lovely town of Nakim, Saskatchewan, in my riding of Yorkton Melville, was recognized with the 5-Leaf Award in the Canada 150 category. The success of the project was spearheaded by two groups from the town's high school with funding from the local thrift store. One group, the Goat Getters, were founded 2 years ago to sponsor a World Vision gift of a goat to a family. And the second was the grade 9-10 art students, and in their evaluation, the judges said, "This is a wonderful display of initiative, volunteering, creativity, gardening, restoration, and youth involvement. A tribute to those who give back willingly to help others." Please join me in congratulating the town of Nacum, Saskatchewan.
Honourable member for Brampton Centre.
Speaker, during this month of September, Hindus from all over the world are celebrating Navratri, a 9-day festival. This is considered to be a cleansing period for body and soul. The ultimate goal of this festival is to attain virtues over the vices and become victorious in the battle of good over the evil. This festival is now very much visible in Canada, as it has been all across India and the rest of the world. This is another example of cultural diversity that makes our country strong. On behalf of my family and my constituents of Brampton Centre, to all those who are celebrating, I wish you a happy Navratri. Let's continue and make the world a place of one family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, Tree Canada is our country's leading national tree planting charity, and I rise today on National Tree Day to offer my warm congratulations on the occasion of their 25th anniversary. For 25 years, Tree Canada has been growing better places to live all across Canada by planting and caring for trees in our community, reforesting rural areas, and by celebrating the environmental, social, cultural, economic, and spiritual benefits of trees. As a former tree planter and reforestation business owner, I was honored to join Tree Canada President Michael Rosen and his staff, volunteers, and board in planting their 82nd millionth tree in Ottawa near Parliament Hill this afternoon. Thank you, Tree Canada, for what you do, and thank you to the Minister of Natural Resources for being there. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the thousands of Canadian tree planters across the country for their hard work restoring Canada's forests and communities in remote regions across the country. Happy National Tree Day.
Hear, hear.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Conservatives are deeply committed to a foreign policy that advances freedom, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, and in particular that advances the rights of religious and ethnic minorities. Last night, you granted our request to convene an emergency debate to discuss the ethnic cleansing of Muslim Rohingya in Burma. I would like to add my voice to those of other members calling on the Burmese government and Burmese military to stop this vicious assault on fundamental human rights. I also call on the Government of Canada to do more to respond. Canada should have done more earlier, but in any event, we can do more now. The Liberal government needs to raise this issue more forcefully with all levels of the Burmese government. We regret that they did not act earlier, that the Prime Minister did not raise this issue during his speech to the United Nations, and that the Liberals eliminated the Office of Religious Freedom. We, the Conservatives, will continue to present constructive proposals for how the government can move forward. Canadians expect us to stand up for the most vulnerable, and we will continue to urge the Prime Minister to do just that.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start with a special thought for my mother, who would have been 90 today. September, as you know, is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and we highlighted the World Alzheimer Day on September 21st. In Canada, more than 1 million people are directly or indirectly affected by this cognitive impairment. The illness turns the lives of people afflicted with it and their loved ones upside down, and research continues to find ways to prevent it. I'd like to take this opportunity to underscore the work done by the Alzheimer's Society of Laval, located in Alfred Pellant. This organization works tirelessly, with dedication, to help people with Alzheimer's. They also offer respite and lodging to help families. Their work on awareness warrants our admiration. Good work can continue doing so.
Honourable member for Essex.
Take Back the Night is an annual event held on college and university campuses and in communities throughout our country. The event includes rallies, marches, and vigils where survivors and supporters alike unite to protest against sexual violence. It's a grassroots event for women to take to the streets and reclaim their right to be there without fear. For women to stand strong, united against all forms of sexual violence and oppression. Our actions work to make our communities safer, standing with survivors fighting for education and awareness of the realities Canadian women face. We also work in solidarity with Indigenous sisters, fighting against the violence through which they survive. Every year, women in Windsor and Essex gather downtown to reclaim the streets with moving speeches by survivors as attendees bear witness to their struggles and their victories. Men join us as allies, lining the streets, holding candles in support. There is nothing more empowering than strong women standing in solidarity with our sisters, mothers, daughters, neighbours and friends. This Saturday, women in Windsor, Essex will take to the streets once again because in Canada, gender-based violence exists and it must end.
Honourable member for Niagara West.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of concerned workers and pensioners who are worried about Sears Canada sliding into bankruptcy. A decision on Sears was made this week, a decision that could cost 15,000 Canadian jobs. The Wall Street Journal has reported that Sears chairman, Mr. Brandon Charles, has made a bid to rescue the company and save some jobs. His long-term commitment to Canada and Sears Canada is real and measurable. I hope the government's long-term commitment to saving jobs is also real and measurable. Under liquidation, major banks and law firms stand to make tens of millions of dollars. This government should do more than simply say the matter is before the courts. I hope this government will communicate to the Bank of Montreal and other interested parties that we must support the people who have helped make Sears Canada part of this country's rich history. We support those 15,000 Canadian jobs.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre. Mr. Speaker, this week, the Economic Development and Employability Network of Canada, RDEE, is celebrating its 20th anniversary. Bilingualism is at the heart of who we are as a country. As a proud Franco-Albertan and former president of the Economic Development Council of Alberta, I'm very familiar with the issues facing Francophone minority communities, and I can assure you that the RDEE is an example of perseverance and works hard to support our communities. It contributes to the economic vitality of Francophone communities across the country and improves quality of life for Canadians. I congratulate the RDEE for its excellent work in encouraging the economic, social, cultural development of Francophone communities. Thanks to their 20 years of hard work, we're in a position to bring together more Francophones, Francophiles, and people with Franco curiosity who enhance the vitality of our Francophone communities here in Canada and abroad.
Questions oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, approximately 6 million Jews perished at the hands of the Nazis during the Second World War. It was an incredibly dark moment in human history and serves as a reminder to all Canadians that we must continue to fight anti-Semitism wherever we find it. Many are persecuted here and around the world for simply being a Jew. I trust that all members agree that we must all stay vigilant to protect their fundamental human rights. Today I will be joining the Prime Minister at the dedication of Canada's National Holocaust Memorial. Can the Prime Minister inform the House about the importance of working together on this issue, and will he join me in congratulating all those who helped make the dream of a memorial a reality?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to congratulate all members of this House from all parties who came together to make sure that this monument got built. This is an important commemoration of the 6 million Jewish men, women and children, as well as 5 million other victims that were murdered during the Holocaust. It will recognize those who survived, many of whom made their way to countries around the world, including Canada, and it will stand as a reminder of the dangers of hatred, racism and intolerance, while affirming respect for human rights, dignity and resilience. With this monument, we all stand together and say solemnly, never again.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
Monsieur le Président, hier au comité.
Yesterday, at the Finance Committee, experts confirmed that the Prime Minister's plan to increase local businesses' taxes will negatively affect the middle class. Will he admit that his own family fortune will not be affected by these tax increases? It is not surprising that local business owners are angered by this. When will they start listening to local business owners instead of emptying their pockets? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are listening to small businesses and Canadians who are telling us that they want the tax system to be fair. It is unfair that wealthy people can use private corporations to pay tax rates that are lower than that of the middle class. That is why we committed to increasing taxes for the wealthiest, to lowering them for the middle class, and to helping the middle class, including small businesses, to succeed in our economy.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday tax experts confirmed that the Prime Minister's unfair tax hikes would include, quote, terrible disincentives that will stall innovation and hurt the middle class. They also condemned the Liberals', quote, negative tone and, quote, offensive branding of business owners as tax cheats. And even the Liberal member for Edmonton Centre agrees with that one. Will the Prime Minister listen to entrepreneurs, experts, and even his own caucus members, apologize to business owners, and stop this unfair tax grab?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the issue is not with people not following the rules, because people are following the rules. The problem is the rules favor wealthier Canadians over the middle class. Those are the rules we inherited from the Conservatives, and that's part of why Canadians chose this party, this government, to make those changes to the system. The first thing we did was lower taxes on the middle class and raise them on the wealthiest 1%. We then delivered a Canada Child benefit that helps 9 out of 10 Canadian families with the high cost of raising their kids by not sending those benefits to millionaire families.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's raising taxes on the middle class. He's cancelled popular tax credits, everything from public transit to children's activities. He's threatening a carbon tax that will raise the cost of everything. And now on top of payroll taxes that will make it harder for businesses to hire and expand, he's threatening them with a cash grab, but protecting family fortunes like his own and the Finance Minister. That's not fair. Nobody voted for that in the last election. When will the Prime Minister finally listen to all those who create jobs in our communities and stop his unfair tax grab?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have seen this movie before. It was the 2015 election campaign when the Conservatives were focused on me and on protecting wealthy Canadians, and we were focused on listening to Canadians and helping the middle class and those working hard to join it. For 10 years, Mr. Speaker, that party gave tax breaks and advantages to wealthy Canadians and didn't worry about the middle class. Well, we changed that, and we're going to continue to change that. No matter how much they shout, we are going to keep standing up for the middle class and those working hard to join it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
It's not just us who are upset, Mr. Speaker. We're here as the voice of the millions of Canadians who are going to be hurt by his tax. The record on this is clear. Even the Parliamentary Budget Officer agrees that Conservative changes, quote, have been more progressive overall, and that under our government, quote, low and middle income earners have benefited more in relative terms than higher income earners. But let's talk about the wealthy, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister spent Monday with a Chinese billionaire, and last week he met for the third time with the CEO of BlackRock. Why does the Prime Minister love spending so much time with his billionaire friends, but then he locks the door on hardworking middle class people?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to talk Monday about the opportunities for small businesses across this country to sell to the growing market in China. Our government is working hard to be able to ensure that small producers, whether they be ice wines or cherries, lobsters or apparel, that they be able to pierce into the Chinese market and get good returns for their communities, for their country, and grow the economy. These are the kinds of things that we're busy working hard on to to benefit directly the middle class, those working hard to join it, workers across this country, and yes, small business owners who we know are the heart of growth in this country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, so many families in Atlantic Canada rely on local businesses.
Excuse me, I think that. I just want to check something. Hold on 1 second, please. What's that? I understand we've already had 5 questions.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Thousands of Canadians are worried about their jobs. Yesterday, we had a reality check with the Trump administration in Washington when it imposed ridiculously high tariffs on Bombardier. But it's not just the employees of Bombardier that are worried. Across Canada, companies who are part of their supply chain have every reason to be concerned. What concrete action will the Prime Minister take to save those Canadian jobs?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to inform this House that our Minister of Foreign Affairs brought up this issue directly with Trade Representative Leitziger today in the NAFTA negotiations. We will continue to stand up for Canadian jobs every step of the way, defend our workers in the aerospace industry in Quebec and right across the country. We know that the punitive actions taken by Boeing are completely unfounded and without merit. We continue to stand by Canadian aerospace industry, and we will fight for it every step of the way.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Deal with Trump is like watching Bambi deal with Godzilla, Mr. Speaker. It's not an even fight. C'est ça la réponse du Premier ministre.
That's the Prime Minister's answer? Throughout Canada, there are tens of thousands of jobs that are at stake. When will the Prime Minister finally stand up and fight for jobs in the aerospace sector here in Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we rise every day to defend jobs in Canada, and we will continue to do so, whether it be with the Americans or around the world. We defend workers' interests, the capacity of the Canadian economy to innovate and to grow. That is essential for the future and to ensure Canada's success and the world's success. We will continue to defend jobs in the aerospace sector throughout the country. We will continue to stand up against the irresponsible actions of Boeing and the Americans. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Quote, we will make Parliament open by default, and, quote, we will ensure that access to information applies to the Prime Minister's and Ministers' offices. Now, from an audit released today on how open this government truly is, quote, even worse than in the latter years of the former Stephen Harper government. And yesterday, the Access to Information Commissioner said she was, quote, very disappointed with this government. As a former teacher, what grade would the Prime Minister give his government's performance on access to information?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to raise the bar on openness and transparency by bringing forward the most significant changes to access to information since 1983. We are empowering the Information Commissioner to order information to be released. We are expanding the Act to include a system of legislative proactive disclosure for ministers' offices, the Prime Minister's office, administrative institutions that support Parliament, and others. We had committed to making Parliament more open, accountable, and accessible to Canadians, and that is exactly what we're doing.
Order, order. I know it's Wednesday and people are in good mood. I know they're enthusiastic, but I asked them to try and contain their enthusiasm and make sure that we can all hear the answers, especially so that I can tell if somebody's breaking the rules.
The Honourable Member for Outremont. Only 1/4 of requests for information were answered before the standard 30-day time period. And out of all reviewed requests, 1/3 received no answer at all. When journalists receive answers, they are documents that are completely censored, pages and pages of black ink, Mr. Speaker. Open by default. That's what we were promised. Will the Prime Minister admit that he is the one who has failed? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We are improving openness and transparency of the government by putting forward the most important changes to the Access to Information Act since 1983. The Information Commission will have the power to order the production of information. We are going to extend the scope of the law by including a system of proactive for several offices. We are going to offer key information such as information books for new ministers and make them available to all Canadians without them even having to ask for them. When it comes to openness and transparency, the Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, more and more people are protesting Liberals' ad hoc tax reform. Local businesses, business people's associations, chambers of commerce, provinces, and even Liberal MPs are protesting. Will the members on the other side have the courage to rise and to say to this Prime Minister that this is enough? We cannot further tax business people who create jobs and who employ others. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for 10 years, the Conservative Party, when it was in power, tried to give more advantages to the wealthiest in order to help the economy, and it didn't work. Canadians asked our government to make the tax system more fair by increasing taxes for the wealthiest and by lowering them for the middle class. We will always support the middle class. We will always support small businesses, but we want our system to be fair. That is why we are asking more of the wealthiest. The Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska. Here's the reality. 81% of middle-class families pay more taxes and income tax today than when the former Conservative government was in power. And now the Prime Minister is directly attacking local businesses with tax reforms that will destroy jobs throughout Canada by taking even more money out of their pockets and the pockets of the middle class. Are we to understand that the Liberal Party's new slogan and the Prime Minister's new slogan will be to do what I say and not what I do? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The Honourable Member wants to talk about numbers. Well, I'll give you some simple ones. 1.8 million businesses exist in Canada. Out of that 1.8 million private businesses, 30 million hold 80% of active investments. We think that those 30,000 corporations should pay their fair share. That's why we want to make the system more fair. We are supporting the middle class. We support small businesses. But we're going to ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
Mr. Speaker, the government House leader said this about the Liberal tax hikes. The longer we're talking about this, the more people are concerned that they will be impacted, which is really raising a fear. Well, she's right. Entrepreneurs, small business owners, farmers, their employees are worried sick about the impact of these Liberal tax changes. But here's the real slap in the face. These tax changes will have no impact on wealthy investments like those of the Prime Minister. So my question is, why are the Prime Minister's investments and his business revenues untouched by these tax changes?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, Canadians watch these Conservatives stay focused on me while I stay focused on Canadians. We are focused on small business owners who need help.
Order. It's getting much too noisy. Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister has the floor.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, these Conservatives love to talk about me, but I want to talk about Canadians. I want to talk about those small business owners. I want to talk about hard-working Canadians who didn't get a break for 10 years under a Conservative government. We're going to continue to create benefits for the middle class and those working hard to join it, because not just because it's the right thing to do, because that's what grows the economy. The Canada Child Benefit, the tax break for the middle class, these are the things that have led to the economic growth we're seeing now.
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Well, there's a pattern with the Prime Minister talking about himself. He takes away childcare benefits from families across Canada, saying wealthy families like himself don't need help with their childcare. Then he gets 2 full-time nannies paid for, guess who? The taxpayer. Then he says the rich should pay more, and he taxes all of our local businesses while his investment is protected. Why is the Prime Minister always creating policy that protects himself and making hardworking Canadians pay for his bill?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, we see that the Conservative Party has one approach: personal attacks. We're not going to engage with that. We're going to focus on helping Canadians.
Order. I'd ask members to try to control themselves and to try to control their colleagues. Ask them to calm down. Otherwise, there's a danger of losing questions. Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister has the floor.
Speaker, we're going to stay focused on what Canadians asked us to do. Fix the system so it's fairer. Make the changes to the system that the Conservatives refuse to make, and help the middle class and those working hard to join it. That's our focus. We're going to be supporting small businesses. We're going to be supporting hardworking Canadians. Let them continue to fight for wealthy Canadians. We know that we grow the economy from the centre out.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, these Conservatives will always call out rank hypocrisy when we see it. And we know that under this Liberal government, the middle class is paying higher taxes. Farmers, tradespeople and small local business owners across Canada are worried, and crippling new tax proposals from this government could see them paying even more. They pay more while the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister and their family fortunes will remain untouched. Why should hard-working farm families see their taxes increase when the wealthy elites like this Prime Minister will continue to have his family fortune sheltered?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, they can't help themselves. They keep talking about me. I'm going to stay focused on Canadians. I'm going to stay focused on the fact that 80% of the money in passive investment in private corporations across this country is held by less than 2% of those private corporations. We know, Canadians all know, that the system gives advantages to wealthy Canadians, encourages wealthy Canadians to use private corporations to pay lower tax rates than middle-class Canadians. That's not fair, and that's what we're staying focused on.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, these Liberal tax proposals were carefully crafted to protect those that matter most to the Liberals themselves. Because under this Liberal government, wealthy insiders are always taken care of. The Finance Minister's billion-dollar family business, Morneau Chappelle, it's protected. The Prime Minister's family fortune and taxpayer-paid nannies will be sheltered while small businesses are forced to pay more. Can the Prime Minister confirm he won't lose a single cent of his family fortune because of these Liberal tax changes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, what we see from these Conservatives are the politics of fear, of anxiety, of insecurity, of scaremongering. We stand here to commit to Canadians that we will support the middle class and those working hard to join it, that hard-working small businesses will get benefits and that the wealthiest will pay their fair share. That's what Canadians asked us to do. That is what we're staying focused on, despite the tactics of the opposition.
Deputy.
The Honourable Member for Outremont. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Canadian companies hid nearly $40 billion in tax havens, which cost Canadian taxpayers between $5 and $8 billion in unpaid taxes. The Liberals say they want a tax system where everyone pays their fair share. When will they crack down on companies that use tax havens? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this government takes tax evasion very seriously, And that is why, for the last 2 budgets, we've invested nearly $1 billion in the Canadian Revenue Agency in order to counter tax evasion and avoidance. We know that there's always more to do, but we are doing it. We take this very seriously, and we expect, like all Canadians, that our tax system be fair for everyone. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Promised, quote, an overdue and wide-ranging review of the over $100 billion in tax expenditures that now exist. That's precisely what we in the NDP are calling for, to widen the consultations and go after tax havens and stock option loopholes like they promised. But the government refuses. The finance minister said, quote, that issue is not something that we've backed away from. It's just not something we've moved forward on. Will the Liberals respect their own platform and finally go after tax scams for the rich?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
I can understand the NDP's impatience. They always seem to be impatient about everything. We are working very, very hard to get just that. We put close to $1 billion into tax avoidance and tax evasion by giving the tools to Canada Revenue Agency to actually be able to counter that. We continue to work hard on making our tax system fairer. That's why we put forward proposals that will ask wealthy Canadians to stop using the advantages that the system currently gives them. That's why we're changing the system, and I'd love to hear the NDP supporting us in that measure.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has gone across the country accusing our small businesses, avoiding paying their fair share, attacking them as, quote, wealthy cheats. Mr. Speaker, those are the words of the Prime Minister. Now he wants us to cry crocodile tears for him because people are asking questions about the bills that he's going to have to pay under these proposals. Under the proposal, Mr. Speaker, a small business owner will pay as high as 73% of his passive income, whereas this Prime Minister will pay almost a third less on his public pension. How is that fair?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
It's always the question, Mr. Speaker, whether the Conservatives actually believe what they're saying or they just choose to make it up as they go along. Because the numbers that they put forward have absolutely no basis in reality. We are focused on the fact that the system we inherited from Canadians encourages wealthy Canadians to use private corporations to pay lower tax rates than middle-class Canadians, and that's not fair. We are going to fix that because that's what Canadians expect of this government. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
He has a problem with our numbers. This is a Prime Minister who said he'd raise $3 billion in additional taxes from the wealthy, but just last week his own finance department produced a report showing that revenues from the wealthiest taxpayers actually went down by $1 billion in the first fiscal year. And then a report this week by the Fraser Institute showed that taxes actually went up by $800 for the average middle-class family. Why is everything that should be going down going up, and everything that should be going up going down?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the members opposite want to talk about how Canadian families are doing, they need to acknowledge the Canada Child Benefit, which the Fraser Institute completely overlooked. The Canada Child Benefit delivers more money to 9 out of 10 Canadian families, and has been doing so for over a year now. And what it is doing is not only lifting hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty across this country, reducing child poverty by 40%, it is creating growth in our economy by putting more money in the pockets of the middle-class families who need it. These are the things we're doing that they never did and that they opposed.
The Honourable Member for Carleton. Order.
Mr. Speaker, nobody saw their child care benefit increase more than this Prime Minister, who now has 2 taxpayer-funded nannies, despite the fact that he has a massive multi-million-dollar family fortune. And Mr. Speaker, a small business person earning just $50,000 a year under the proposed plan would pay a tax rate of 60% on his passive income. This Prime Minister would pay 53% on his passive income. How is that fair? Why is a small business person paying so much more than this millionaire Prime Minister?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, you shouldn't be able to stand in this House and just make things up.
Honourable Member for Carleton. I guess we're going to have to go on. I'll have to plead d'Outremont.
The honourable member for Outremont.
Nobody talks.
Wait. Okay. Ask the question. Speaker took sides there.
Nobody talks a better game than the Prime Minister when it comes to climate change. At the UN, during NAFTA negotiations, you name it, the Liberal Party promises that Canada will respect its commitments, but there's a problem. In order to meet our obligations under the Paris Accord, our greenhouse gas emissions actually have to start going down at some point. After increasing greenhouse gas emissions during his first 2 years in office, can the Prime Minister promise Canadians they'll decrease over the next 2 years? Yes or no?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what Canadians understand is in order to grow a strong economy, we need to protect the environment, and in order to protect the environment, we need to grow the economy. We need to do them both together. Now, members on the opposite side of the House have picked one or the other, don't understand that we need to do them both together. That is why, at the same time as we are moving forward on an economic plan that creates good jobs and gets our resources to new markets, we are bringing in a national carbon pricing framework. We are creating a world-class oceans protections plan. We are incentivizing the creation of renewable energy.
The honourable member for Outremont.
The federal government will actually be increasing greenhouse gas emissions, Mr. Speaker. Le Premier ministre adore faire la...
The Prime Minister loves sermonizing other people, but he's following Stephen Harper's plan, Stephen Harper's timeline, and Stephen Harper's targets. And you know what? He'll never meet those targets because he doesn't have a plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If we don't reduce greenhouse gas emissions, everything else is worth nothing. When will the Prime Minister look Canadians in the eye and say, yes, we will reduce greenhouse gas emissions in this country? That is the question. Let's hope he stops avoiding it. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, the NDP believes that we're doing too much for economic growth, and the Conservatives believe that we're doing too much to protect the environment. We are moving forward with a responsible plan that recognizes our Paris Agreement obligations, that recognizes our responsibility toward future generations, and we are protecting the environment in a responsible way while creating the jobs of the future. That is what Canadians expect, and that is what we will always do.
Member for Don Valley North.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents understand the importance of having sound evidence on which to base our decisions. The decisions that will affect the health and safety of Canadians. Our government was elected on the promise to restore evidence-based decision-making, beginning with the appointment of a chief science advisor, a position abolished by the previous government. Can the Prime Minister update this House on the important developments with this position?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague from Don Valley North for his question. Yesterday, I was proud and delighted to announce, along with the Minister of Science, Canada's new Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Mona Niemer. Dr. Niemer is a distinguished Canadian health researcher and a leading academic executive at the University of Ottawa. As Chief Science Advisor, she will provide impartial scientific advice to myself and the Minister of Science so we can make better decisions based on evidence on health and environmental issues that affect all Canadians.
The member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, if I were defending that plan, I think I might just sit down and be quiet as well, too. This is a plan that will impose a double tax on the passive savings that small business owners use to fund their retirement. That tax can reach as high as 73%. That double tax will not apply to the millionaire owners of multinational companies trading on Bay Street. Why not?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're proud that Canada has competitive corporate tax rates. It's part of our advantage. If the members opposite want to propose to raise corporate tax rates, they can do so in their next election platform. Until that time, we're going to continue to focus on growing the economy, supporting small businesses, and helping the middle class and those working hard to join it. That's what Canadians asked us to do. That's what we're going to continue to do.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, we do not believe in raising taxes on anyone. This member across the way believes in raising them on middle-class small business owners, putting them at a comparative disadvantage with the wealthiest multinational corporations that trade on Bay Street, companies like Morneau Chappelle. Now, those companies will be able to outbid our middle-class small business owners and farmers for assets in the marketplace. Why is this Prime Minister creating distortions that favor the wealthiest elite at the expense of the middle class?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the only distortions are the ones brought forward by the member opposite, who is trying to scare small business owners and torque up an issue to defend the approach that the Conservatives have always taken of benefiting the wealthy and ignoring the hard-working Canadians who work every day to build this country. We committed to help the middle class and those working hard to join it, and that's what we're doing. I might ask the member opposite why he voted against lowering taxes on the middle class and raising them on the wealthiest 1%. That is something we're proud we did. Unfortunately, the members opposite voted against it.
Member for Carleton.
Actually, I didn't vote against that, Mr. Speaker. I voted against a plan that has seen the wealthiest Canadians pay less and the average middle-class Canadian pay $800 more. What I voted in favor of was the previous government's plan to lift 1 million people off the tax rolls altogether and to reduce the tax rate on people earning $30,000 a year by 80%. That's what I voted for. Now, Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is imposing a plan that will apply to every single person who owns a private business, including those with low income. It does not apply to the wealthiest shareholders, including those in his cabinet. Why not?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite has been listening to the consultations as we have, has been talking with Canadians, has been engaging in a broad range of listening to folks. But it disturbs me that he still thinks that we're applying this to every single small business owner. The fact is, we are looking at the fact that wealthy individuals use private corporations to pay lower tax rates than middle-class Canadians. That's not fair. We are going to continue to support small businesses and help middle-class Canadians. It's what we got elected for. It's what we're going to stay focused on, despite all the fears from the other side.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Could the Prime Minister please point to the section or the clause in his proposed legislation or the sentence in his consultation paper in which he clearly states that no one earning less than $150,000 a year will pay any of these new taxes?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're happy to engage in ongoing consultations with Canadians on the details of how to move forward the best way so that we make the tax system fairer. But at the core of this government is a promise to support the middle class and those working hard to join it, to help small businesses succeed in an increasingly disrupted globalized world. We are focused on helping Canadians because for 10 years that government focused on the wealthiest.
Right.
The honourable member for Outremont. If the Prime Minister wants to talk about promises, let's look at another promise that he made. 3 times the Human Rights Tribunal ordered the Prime Minister to stop racial discrimination against First Nations children. But instead of complying, he has continued to fight First Nations children in court. Why is the Prime Minister continuing to perpetuate discrimination against First Nations children? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, no relationship is more important than our relationship with Indigenous peoples. That is why we've committed record amounts, $8.4 billion the first year, $5 billion the next year, to provide services so that we can work to correct the shortcomings for First Nations peoples, which are completely unacceptable. We know there's a lot of work to be done. We are continuing to move forward, and I have great trust in our new minister who will continue to deliver on that promise, which is so long awaited by so many Canadians. We will provide a better future for our young Aboriginal peoples.
Slogan, but here's the reality. The Prime Minister promised a nation-to-nation relationship and to stop taking First Nations children to court. But rather than comply with the Human Rights Tribunal's 3 separate rulings, 2 years into his mandate, he's still spending millions of dollars to fight First Nations children in court. Shame. That's the reality. What those children want to know is, why is the Prime Minister still fighting them in court?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have significantly increased the support to First Nations education, to young Indigenous peoples in difficult situations, but we know there is an awful lot more work to do. That is why we have taken the historic step of this concrete step towards moving beyond the Indian Act once and for all by separating Indigenous and Northern Affairs into 2 distinct departments, one for the nation-to-nation relationships and the other for Indigenous service delivery. This is a meaningful, concrete step that is going to make a real impact in the lives and the future of millions of Canadians across this country.
The member for Lethbridge.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government paid $437,000 to a former Liberal candidate, Cynthia Wesley Eskima, for only a few months of work. Now, this former Liberal candidate is very unapologetic with regards to this gesture. However, Cindy Blackstock described this $500,000 cash grab as nothing more than a public relations exercise. Now, there appears to be a discrepancy in viewpoints here. Does the Prime Minister agree with his former candidate or with Cindy Blackstock?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to completely overhauling child and family services in full partnership with First Nations communities. The Minister's special representative has met with over 26 chiefs, experts, officials, advocates, and individuals with lived experience from coast to coast to coast to inform our commitment to First Nations child welfare reform. We look forward to receiving her report and recommendations on how we can transform the system to better support and reflect the needs of First Nations children and put their well-being first.
Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, close to $500,000 is an extraordinary amount of money for what appears to be a public relations exercise. That's what Cindy Blackstock said, trying to understand the payment of $500,000 for 8 months' work to a failed Liberal candidate and Liberal Party donor. Wow. The Prime Minister rewarded his entitled friend with a gold-plated contract while Indigenous children continued to go without needed care. Will the Prime Minister admit that $500 grand would have been better spent directly on the needs of Canada's Indigenous children rather than in the pocket of this Liberal insider?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, moving forward with a nation-to-nation relationship in the spirit of reconciliation means consulting. It means listening to the affected people to understand how best to move forward. That's why the special representative has met with 26 chiefs, has met with experts, officials, advocates, and individuals with extraordinary lived experiences from coast to coast to coast to inform how we're moving forward on completely renewing child and family services for First Nations communities.
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, another question on the Liberals' wastage of hard-earned tax dollars trying to cover up political problems. $10 million in an attempted secret payoff to Omar Khadr, millions to fight Indigenous children and women in court, almost $500,000 to a defeated Liberal candidate for a PR campaign to fight a tribunal ruling in favour of Indigenous children. Mr. Speaker, why is the Prime Minister robbing the middle class to pay for Liberal profligacy?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand the member opposite's outrage at the settlement in the Omar Khadr case. I understand Canadians' outrage. I understand how angry I am that we had to settle that. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, We should all be outraged and remain outraged that Canadian governments violated a Canadian's fundamental rights. And if we stay angry enough for long enough, maybe no future government will ever violate a Canadian's fundamental rights that way again.
The honourable member, order.
Alors.
Order. The honourable member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, the World Anti-Doping Agency is located in Montreal. It's a very important organization given its mission. This agency not only creates good jobs in the region of Montreal, it also raises our profile on the international stage. Can the Prime Minister inform this House and all Canadians of the measures that this government is taking to ensure that this organization will stay in Montreal long term? Right Honourable Prime Minister, I thank the member for Bourassa for his question. The World Anti-Doping Agency is an important organization for Montreal, Quebec, and all of Canada. The Minister of Transport, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Science and Innovation, as well as others, have worked with the Government of Canada and the City of Montreal to maintain that headquarters in Montreal. There's still work to be done, but I'm happy that the steering committee of the agency is engaging in negotiations for the headquarters to stay in 21 past 2021 for another 10 years.
Speaker, hundreds of people across Atlantic Canada have been coming out to town halls and public consultations because they are legitimately concerned about the Prime Minister's own proposals. They know this is going to have such a negative impact because so many of them are local business owners, and they use these measures legitimately to pass on the family farm or the fishing boat. And today, all 4 Atlantic opposition leaders are denouncing the Prime Minister's plan because they know that under his administration, middle-class Canadians are paying more. And it's even worse in Atlantic Canada, where provincial Liberal taxes are already killing jobs and opportunities. Will the Prime Minister finally listen to his Atlantic Canadian friends, even his own caucus, and cancel these unfair taxes?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government is always proud to stand up for and stand with our friends from Atlantic Canada. We know that creating economic growth, that boosting small businesses, that creating economic opportunity across Atlantic Canada is a priority that this government shares with all Atlantic Canadians. That's why we're moving forward to make our tax system fairer so that we can support small businesses as they work hard to grow our economy right across the country, and we can make sure that everyone pays their fair share of taxes.
Honourable member for Outremont. The Prime Minister himself promised that he would restore home mail delivery for everyone who had lost it. 10 months ago, the House Committee, with several Liberal members sitting on it, recommended that this service should be restored. Since that recommendation, we've heard absolutely nothing from the government. Why won't the Prime Minister simply admit that he's broke his own promise to restore home mail delivery service? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect a high-quality service from Canada Post, and that's what we've promised to them. We know that we live in a world that is changing. We put a moratorium on the installation of new post boxes. We know that there's a lot of thought that needs to be put into the issue of how we can make Canada Post meet our expectations and our responsibilities, and that's what we're working on very diligently. The Honourable Member for Miramichi-Grand Lake. Mr. Speaker, we all know that this is very important for our environment,
which are significant to our heritage, culture, and of course our economy. Canada is committed to protecting 5% of our marine and coastal area by the end of this year and 10% by 2020. Can the Prime Minister update this House on the government's progress towards these targets? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Miramichi-Grand Lake for his question. We are deeply committed to achieving our marine conservation targets. I'm pleased to announce in this House today that we are taking one more step towards reaching our goal by creating 2 marine refuges on the East Coast, including one in Miramichi Bay in my colleague's riding. This is just one more example of our real action to protect our oceans for future generations.
Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
100 years ago, the wartime government of Robert Laird Borden introduced an income tax. Believe it or not, Liberals actually opposed the new tax. But wait, Liberals opposed the new income tax because, you guessed it, it wasn't high enough. The Liberal whip of the day said it would be a mere flea bite and complained that the new tax does not take from men enough to make it hurt. I give them full marks for consistency, but after 100 years of Liberals continually pressing to raise taxes, isn't it time to stop making it hurt so much?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past 2 years, we've seen, after 10 long years of Conservative governance, positive signs of growth, job creation, an economy on the upswing, and a large part of that is because of the investments we made in our communities, in the middle class, and because we lowered taxes on the middle class and raised them on the wealthiest 1%, because we brought in a Canada Child benefit that puts more money in the pockets of those who need it by not sending money to those who don't need it. And we continue to be committed to making our tax system fairer for Canadians, and that's exactly what we're doing with the recent measures we're discussing.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's speech to the UN General Assembly stressed the humiliation, neglect, and abuse that many Indigenous people have suffered as a result of colonialism in Canada. The trauma experienced by those of us who attended residential schools has resulted in transgenerational addiction and mental health issues in Nunavut. These issues have and continue to contribute to a suicide rate in Nunavut that is 10 times the national average. Can the Prime Minister inform the House of the government's plan to address this crisis? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Prime Minister.
I want to thank the member from Nunavut for his question. We are committed to a renewed nation-to-nation relationship and to closing the gap in health and mental wellness and outcomes for First Nations and Inuit peoples. We are investing more than $300 million each year in community programming to help address the mental wellness needs of First Nations and Inuit populations. Budget 2017 also included $118.2 million over 5 years to supplement existing mental health programming for First Nations and Inuit. There remains much more to do, but we are committed to supporting local communities in a true Inuit to Crown relationship.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Her Excellency Malu Dreyer, President of the Federal Council, the Bundesrat of the Federal Republic of Germany.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie is rising on a point of order. Yes, Mr. Speaker. I think you will agree that there is unanimous consent for the following motion: that this House acknowledge the importance of the aeronautic industry and that Bombardier is an important employer in Canada, in Quebec, and it reiterate the importance of this company and the importance of protecting jobs in light of the decision taken in the United States. The honourable member have the consent of the House to move the motion. The House has heard the terms of the motion. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion?
Adopted.
Carried.
L'honourable député, the honourable member for Carleton is rising on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is standard practice that members make reference to government documents in the House of Commons, that they do table them. Earlier on during the debate, I made reference to the annual financial report of the Government of Canada, which showed that the wealthiest Canadians paid